Thanks everyone for joining us on Krtd News Fourth Fridays. We had a little hiccup with Third Fridays. I was away in New Mexico and did not get back in time to plan out Third Fridays, so we did not have a news show last week. I'm sorry, everybody. Now, I just have one announcement before we start. Krtd News on First Fridays is coming back. We have a guest host for the foreseeable future with Jerry Basteladis from Chicago Corner. He's going to be from the Hardlands Media guys. He's going to be guest hosting. He's great for First Fridays, but it's going to be after Chicago Corner on Fridays, so that'll be later in the night. All right. Thanks for being with me, Joe. Let's go ahead and get started with our first story.
Yeah, it'll be nice seeing Jerry on. That's some good stuff going on there. So our first story of the day is the Clinton lawyer is charged with the Russiagate scam, is now indicted. Now, this is Michael A. Sussman. In accusing Clinton campaign lawyer Michael Sussman of lying to the FBI, special counsel John Durham offers new evidence of the fabrications behind the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory. And the indictment of Hillary Clinton attorney Michael Sussman offers new evidence that the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory that engulfed Trump's term in office was itself the product of fabrication involving Clinton's 2016 campaign. Although Sussman faces just one count of a false statement charge, the 27-page charging document offers an expansive window into how the Russiagate scam began and how Democratic operatives...
I can't see the slideshow on screen.
Good. Although Sussman faces just one count of false statement charges, the 27-page charging document offers an expansive window into how the Russiagate scam began and how Democratic operatives, intelligence officials, and establishment media figures dishonestly fed it to the public. Sussman, until recently an attorney with the Clinton campaign law firm Perkins & Coie, is the second person to be charged by John Durham, the special counsel scrutinizing the Russia investigation. Now, Sussman is accused of lying to the FBI during the September 2016 meeting in which he tried to raise alarm about secret communications between the Trump organization and Russia's Alfa Bank. Sussman gave then FBI attorney Jim Baker documents and data purporting to show the computer servers associated with Trump and Alfa Bank were in regular contact. This was evidence, Sussman argued, of a possible covert back channel. According to Durham, Sussman told Baker that he was not working for any client and was simply passing on information that had been provided to him by multiple cyber experts who had come across a suspicious web traffic. This is further detailed in Aaron Mate's article, as you can see on the first page. So, yes, and so Shane, what's your take on this initially as far as things go? I mean, it's interesting to see this finally come to light for being the scam it was, particularly among the Democratic VIPs and the way they promoted it, creating that whole illusion, So
the first thing I want to do is I want to tie Russiagate into it. So this Russiagate wasn't a thing until WikiLeaks became a thing. It was created to combat WikiLeaks in a lot of ways. The Clintons were perpetuating it around the time where WikiLeaks was a big deal. Hillary, had her own scandal. So, of course, you need to create a scandal for Donald Trump in order to match her scandal of WikiLeaks, emails, and all of that other stuff. Good stuff. Now, of course, you have the mainstream media for the last 4 years has been talking about Russiagate being a big deal and this huge thing. And then everybody remembers the Mueller investigation and all that other crap. If you actually read the Mueller report, all it does is say that Trump has a lot of other criminal dealings. It doesn't say anything about Russia or Putin or any campaign links to that. It just talks about all the other crimes.
Yeah, so, this article, like many of Mate's articles, while super in-depth and lovely, is literally like, he pretty much should have put chapter numbers on stuff, because this is like you'd have a tough time getting preteen people in middle school to do a book report on it. It's like you know, they would not sit home and read it. But luckily, that's what you have us for. But
yeah.
Monte goes into kind of recap, right? What's been happening from almost the beginning with the Russiagate story, right? Talking about the Trump Alpha ridiculousness that they tried to pin Trump on, and how Hillary Clinton tried to push for these particular things, and computer scientists and apparently uncovered a covert server linking the Trump organization to a Russian-based bank. Like, all this nonsense that Monte goes in and essentially says how it was fabricated and who put people up to it and stuff like that. It goes
that really
into,
is one of the
go ahead.
That really is one of the interesting things about this whole scenario is there was no shortage of criminal dealings for Trump for them to go after.
Yeah.
That they actually manufactured something in order to sensationalize it with everything else that was going on is just utterly amazing. It didn't take that much. The Mueller investigation went in, found his dealings in New York, found his dealings in Florida, a significant number of dealings in a lot of places that necessarily wouldn't qualify for federal prosecution because it was violation of local laws along the lines of RICO. But it's literally fabricated from the get-go. It's as if they literally created something that was intended to fall apart under close scrutiny.
Well, here's the thing. They needed this because there was the WikiLeaks scandal at the same time.
So, but according to the detailed indictment, Sussman was in fact trying to plant a political motivated scam. The theory of a purported covert Trump Alpha channel has been cooked up by an unnamed tech executive positioning himself for a top cybersecurity job in the anticipated Clinton administration, right? So this was, Mark Elias is connected here, Perkins Coy, stuff like that. Right.
That's an interesting thing because literally I am lying about something.
Yeah.
In order to create a situation that gives me a job in an industry that I lied about something.
Yeah. Which that could play, a monkey wrench into, I think the indictment, it says up here at the top, it's making a false statement is the violation, right?
Right.
Which is more than like libel, right? That's saying that someone
another aspect of what's
under oath lied.
Yes. Because this is literally making a false statement under oath. That's why it's criminal.
Right.
And because what was involved with Congress and the FBI in relationship to this investigation and the false statement, it's interesting because normally this would fall under a libel suit. This would be a tort claim, but because of the way it was handled through the FBI, the false claim was made, it was investigated, and literally they're coming back right now against, and because at the time, this was something that was strongly promoted by the Clinton team, as well as the lawyers, it's going to have long-lasting effects, especially among the Democrats. I mean, literally, they lied.
Yeah.
It's documented. They lied under oath. They promoted a lie that came out under oath.
You think
the
think
Democratic voters are not going to accept it. They're going to.
It depends on if they're asleep or not, which is plenty of them right now. No one cares about the Russiagate story anymore unless they need to yell at Trump another couple hours on the news. What I find,
unless we bring up the Hunter Ukraine story right now.
Oh yes. There's something about a laptop that's his, and it's so confusing. All the misinformation mainstream media puts out on these things. How are we to know that it was Hunter's laptop? Ooh. Anyway,
all three of them. How did he lose all three of them?
All three of them, drug dealers at that too. So while Biden's indicting for drug offenses everywhere else and kicking people off for the use of drugs, and Hunter though that's fine. But anyway, I wanted to look at this is a it's a district court thing for DC, right?
Yes.
We've got John Durham, right? FBI special counsel. I don't know what investigation he's leading and who's making him lead it, right? I'm sure there's strings behind that as well, right? But everyone should go.
Thing, because
I'm going to put
this
the link.
FBI investigation obviously had to start during the Trump administration. He's too far along in the investigation right now for it to have been a Biden policy, and the fact that it's actually going after Democratic operatives and VIPs, in some cases naming names.
Yeah.
For the Biden administration to consider that as a viable way to go forward, that's going to be interesting. Yeah. I'm honestly surprised that the Biden administration didn't terminate this particular investigation upon.
They're going to let it go just this far. If it gets any further, if anything gets up to Hillary Clinton herself, or if anything gets up to Bill Clinton or anything like that, then they're going to terminate the investigation.
So I put the link to Monte's Substack article in chat. I suggest everyone going through and reading through it. It's actually a really good read. He goes through and goes through what the media has been doing in this story as well, right? The New Yorker putting up, and essentially that he's also pointing out that the journalists involved in this are also not going to have anything happen to them, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
To quote mainstream media, it looks like the walls are closing in on this on this trial. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for sure. When is this set to go to court? Does it say in the article anywhere? I will look for that information.
All right. So while you're doing that, this is what's going to happen. Which we already know this isn't true, but once
talks about the Steele dossier and how ridiculous that is, right? And how that was fabricated, stuff like that.
The interesting thing about this is literally every one of these journalists that were involved in this essentially doubled down on the information time and time again, even when it was presented that it was false. You had Rochelle Maddow, you had a number of others, it was Russiagate, all this entire time. And if we were to actually go back and take a look, what happened to Dan Rather?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they kicked Chris Hedges off.
He'd been handed the bad information by someone he trusted.
Yep.
Okay, he had no idea that he was doubling down on fake news.
Yep.
But in this case, literally every one of these journalists for MSNBC, CNBC, doubled down knowing that Russiagate was a prop. It was a scam from the get-go.
Well, and I'm wondering.
Well, that's because the mainstream media is a joke.
There's a lot of stuff that Monte's pulling up on this particular connection between Sussman and Clinton's and how it involved with a lot of other stuff in this article. And I'm wondering how much of that will be part of this special investigation, right? Because, if this is making a false statement, one violation, with this, they have a whole special, special counsel, right? What else are they looking at? Are they trying to put this whole thing together, or?
And while we're looking at this, Sussman and Durham, this is a false statement under oath.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've literally gone over this with Fox News back in the 80s. This is the First Amendment right. This is the entertainment industry. We have a right to lie.
Yeah.
And literally every one of the news agencies, every one of the mainstream media has literally been moved under the heading of entertainment these days,
right?
Largely so that they can lie at will about whatever they want without any repercussion.
Right, because especially if it's from an anonymous source or whatever, this is the thing, that because of who they're going after Sussman, right? Who is an attorney himself, I think, right?
Yes.
So
Well,
the
yeah, he's
stuff that
Hillary's
the
foot.
stuff that he said under oath is much different than that of what a journalist would. The journalists are allowed to lie about it. This guy can't legally, right?
Well, correct, especially under oath to the
Under
FBI.
oath, right, to the FBI. And the FBI kind of they definitely don't take too kindly to people in the Clinton administration from doing it, because the last time someone in the Clinton administration made a false statement, I don't know if y'all remember, but I did not have emails connected to Russia.
Well, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was
that's what they got him on too. They got him on making a false statement, did they not? To under oath to Congress.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
I mean, I know it's confusing for the Arkansas man because that's what you're supposed to do with cousins, but I don't know. To me, I'm wondering. I want to keep an eye out for this. I'm sure Mate is right now doing more and more research there, but go ahead.
This is never going to be covered by MSNBC or CNN.
No.
Fox News,
not by any stretch of the imagination.
They do a pickup to make himself look good. That guy, he's BS too. But the mainstream media is not really going to cover it. If anything comes, they're going to gloss over the story.
They'll cover it if they find something to discredit Durham with.
Fox,
Fox might. Tucker might bring it up. Tucker might bring Mate on to bring it up.
That's the thing. He might do that. And then everybody will say, well, because Tucker Carlson brought on Aaron Mate, now it's not a credible story anymore. And we have to ignore it. That's what the classic
I guarantee they will begin to discredit John Durham. Durham. They'll definitely try to discredit that guy. He's not a good FBI agent, whatever.
Right. He's only been special counsel for how long now?
Yeah. They'll try to discredit as the more he pushes on this, the more the media will go, Russia bad. He's part of Russia too. Like they're just gonna try to throw whatever they got at that problem, and
they'll say, well, Putin, and I'm gonna tell you, the Putin is buying the FBI and this and
Putin's affecting courts with money. Are you saying we shouldn't be able to affect courts with money? Because I'm with you. That shouldn't be the case to be able to buy your way through the justice system. But we are welcome to.
Durham was sworn in 2018, so he's been the special prosecutor investigator for this. Right. As part of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Janet C. Hall was the district chief judge who swore him in on the case. So he's been doing his due diligence for the better part of 3 years in order to come up with the information he's gotten, being able to proceed forward on this.
You guys want to head to our next story?
Yes, absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Let's head to our next story then.
Okay, so amid reports of homelessness and food insecurity, 25,000 employees sue Disneyland for better pay. This is out of SF-Gate, which is the newspaper out of San Francisco. So we feel like there's always somebody else that will fill our spot. Disneyland cast member Gabrielle Saraceno told SF-Gate, and we're just there. Saraceno, who's worked at Disneyland Hotel for 15 years as a valet, parking cars and assisting guests with their luggage. For all of those 15 years, he's earned minimum wage from Disney and supplements his income with tips. But a recent decision from leadership that prevents valets from handling luggage has cut substantially into his earnings. He's now one of the 25,000 cast members, as Disneyland calls its employees, who are participating in the class action lawsuit against Disneyland that alleges the company is legally obligated to pay a living wage.
I'm just grabbing I don't have the.
I'll
go.
Okay, now I couldn't make it on minimum wage, which is how much they pay me, Saraceno explained. If they're going to make changes where I have less opportunity for tips, then that's half my income gone. I hope to someday buy a house. That extra money I should be able to invest in my community and help my children have an edge. Saraceno considers himself fortunate that his wife and 2 young children are getting by in affordable housing. but not every cast member at Disneyland can claim the same. In fact, according to the survey, 5,000 cast members, many are experiencing difficult living conditions because of low pay. Working for the Mouse, a study by Occidental College and the Economic Roundtable published February 2018 found that 11% of Disneyland employees reported experiencing homelessness in the previous 2 years. 68% were food insecure and 73% said they do not earn enough for basic living expenses. While many employees said that they'd like to take on second jobs, Disneyland often schedules most workers different hours every week, preventing them from doing so.
So first, I want to clarify something that people may not understand. Where it says cast members, Disney considers everybody a cast member. It's everybody who works for any Disney company in the entire country, you're a cast member, you're not an employee. That's how they actually do things.
That includes the Disney stores in every mall, USA.
Yep. It's very weird, but that's what they do. Yeah, it's supposed to be magical. You know, this magical world where everything's okay while you're there. You gotta protect. But clearly, everything's not okay behind the curtain.
I'm looking for the search button.
No, it's never okay behind the curtain. Now, thing is Disney has always had certain practices that have always been suspect with regards to their crew, their cast, their employees. This is not new arrangements as far as what's going on with Disneyland or even Disney World for that matter. And it's interesting because you're actually looking at cast members. So this means the only union these folks can usually reach out to in a lot of cases would be the Screen Actors Guild or something similar, you know, one of the actors guilds. But, you know, here it is, we're talking valets, we're talking clerks at hotels, you know, sounds like they did a workaround in order to get around certain union aspects of the way California does business.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. And how much money do you think Disney makes per year? And how many taxes do you think they don't pay? And how much money do you think they actually, that their executives pocket? That's the thing. Now, and they're paying their employees like this. And then they're also getting rid of opportunities with the luggage for them to make tips. Really? So first you don't pay them enough. Then you cut their income in half by taking away the opportunity to make tips. I wonder what morons are running this magical world.
Well, the interesting thing is right now we are looking at a worker shortage all across the United States. Literally any one of these cast members, if it wasn't for the fact that they really honestly wanted to go work for Disney, they wanted to be part of Disneyland resorts, if they wanted, you know, most of them, that's the only reason they are even there. And you take a look at Saraceno, he's been there 15 years. He's been doing the exact same job for the exact same pay for the last 15 years. But with the worker shortage that's going on across the United States right now, these folks can literally go to work anywhere for nearly double what they're being paid, you know, in order to work at Disneyland. So we're in this situation where we have people who have a dream to work at Disneyland, because let's admit, it is something that an awful lot of people who grew up loving Disney want to be able to do, but they're literally placed on slave wages.
So
how do we reconcile the dream with, you know, the reality of what it's like working for Disneyland?
So discovering these living conditions for his members was the main reason Austin Lynch, Orange County coordinator for the Unite Here Local 11, which represents about 27,000 employees of Disneyland's hotels, started gathering signatures for an initiative in 2,700. Started gathering signatures for an initiative in Anaheim. The crux of the initiative was you are getting taxpayer subsidies in the resort area, and you should be paying a living wage, he told SFK. It was based on the reality that Disney has gotten hundreds of millions of dollars in tax giveaways over the years. In return, they should pay enough for people to live. The initiative became Measure I or L, which is voted into law in Anaheim in 2018 and states that our private businesses receiving city subsidies is required to raise employees' wages to $18 an hour by 2022, plus subsequent cost of living increases. 25,000 signatures for Measure L in just 2 weeks. Disneyland made major accommodations to its compensation structure, agreeing to $15 an hour for cast members. Minimum wage in California is $14 for companies with more than 26 employees. Right? So I'm trying to look through to see if they've made any other demands other than increasing.
I think it's just increasing. But
Yeah.
let's look at other multinational corporations. Let's look at Walmart, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big story in 2009 where Walmart did a food drive for Thanksgiving for their workers, a canned food drive, where they asked shoppers to donate food to their workers. How embarrassing is that?
What I want to know is who was the PR person who approved that? You know, how does that go up through management and somebody looks, this would be a good idea. You know, let's ask our clients to subsidize, you know, our workers that we aren't paying enough.
Yeah.
You know, at what point does somebody walk through and hear the employee, their cashier, say, would you like to donate to the Walmart workers food drive?
Yeah.
Like,
I can tell you, having you know, members of my family work there for a long time, right? It's the amount of, like, you know, fucking over they do of their worker, to the point of they have a team of people that you can call at Walmart that their sole job is to help you get welfare benefits.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
You know, because they would rather you do that than pay you. They'd rather
a team to exploit the system.
Yes. Right. They pay someone to be on staff, you know, multiple, so that you know, all right, what state are you in? Florida? Okay, well, let's call this, and this, and make sure you're on this. And, you know, what, like they're using they're the biggest users of welfare in the country. Now, I know Disney World is what I'm more, like, aware of, right? I know they've been doing terrible practices to all of their staff members for a long time. Right. Most people come out of there, like, the depression rates for employees there is super high. Right. Like, there's been
Disney. It's all happy and light and cheer and joy and
until you
family.
until you make it past that door and all the small things, or small world, whatever you go past that door to see where they really get those animatronics. You're like, okay, you know, we're going to need to get paid more
Maybe
for this.
Disney will do a food drive for their workers for next Thanksgiving.
Now, this is interesting because it's one of those things that we look at. And I saw a tweet not that long ago about the class system in the United States. You know, and there's basically three classes. There is never been to Disneyland. There's been to Disneyland once or twice. And we make an annual trip to Disneyland. Yeah. Okay. We still have nothing related onto the dystopia that is created for the workers.
Yeah.
You know, any of these Disney corporations, whether that's Prescott, you know, or, you know, Disneyland, Disney World, whether we're looking at any of the other Disney sites around the world. I mean, here we have people who are watching Tangled and thinking, oh my God, it'd be so great to work for Disney. Yeah. You know, and then these young 18, 19-year-old actors who end up on site.
Orlando, which has a Disney animators thing there. All the animators leave Disney, and Orlando has one of the biggest video game industries in the country because of it, right? Because Disney animators are like, yeah, I'm good, I'm gone, have fun. You know, it's like the all the magic is taken out of it at the end of the day, and whatever. You know, these kind of places always remind me of exploitation of places like Hawaii and New Zealand and Australia and stuff like that, where it's these rich investors come into an area, right, and essentially turn the only business available into tourism. So, you know, the amount of that people who are busking essentially in Disneyland day to day, who pay a ticket to get in so that they can sell you inflatable balloons or, you know, whatever, that aren't technically sanctioned by Disney, is ridiculous, right? Because it's like the only place for people to make any money in Orlando, other than, like, you know, getting a job at your dad's, you know, like, car towing place. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many options, and half of them are at Disney. You're going to work at the restaurants at Disney. You're going to work at the hotels at Disney. You're going to be cleaning the toilets at Disney. If you're an engineer, you're going to be working at Disney. You're an animator at Disney. You write anything, you're going to be over there at Disney. Like, you draw anything, you're over at Disney. You paint at Disney. Like, everything's over there. Like, that's where you're going. That's where you're working.
Yes.
Like, if you're, and, you know, the food industry is controlled out of that. You know, like, Disney also controls things that are outside of Disney. There.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You know,
they
like,
are the industry in town.
Universal Studio is over there at Orlando too, but they have to take considerations from Disney to, like, do things and whatever. And
are they owned by Disney at this point or not yet?
No, they're still separate, Universal Studios, but
for now.
I mean, Disney, yeah, for now. How long before Disney buys up Universal? They've already bought up.
They're going?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, which entertainment news company do they own these days? Doesn't
ABC?
ABC?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Disney owns ABC News Entertainment.
Right. They own ABC News, and they have the ABC, you know, the TV lineups and all that other stuff.
Well, what is it? Why do entertainment industries own so much of our news? Yeah. Literally, we got like 3 major companies, 3 major news sources, you know, and literally every one of them is owned by an entertainment industry mogul. Less than, 6 people decide what is mainstream news all across the United States.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Fox, whether it's MSNBC, which is, I believe, Microsoft and Gates, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you got Washington Post and what Bezos is doing with his stuff. Disney owns ABC.
I think that the guy who owns Fox News also owns one of the newspapers, one of the major newspapers.
Yeah.
He did for a while.
Clinton took a lot of those protections away from keeping those as
There's a great clip.
Like, Clinton decided to, like, I forget what he removed, right? But he refused some acts that, like, they had to.
Was it the Fairness Doctrine?
The Fairness Doctrine went back with Reagan. Reagan was the one who did away with the Fairness Doctrine. And there was something else he did at the same time, and that was he busted the trust program that was going on. And that allowed the consolidation of news all across the United States. Right. Because at the time before that was busted, literally no one person could own more than 3 news companies.
Right.
Yeah. And by that, I mean, literally, they could only own a newspaper in a town. That was one of the 3 they could own.
Yeah.
You know, and then we did away with the news trust busting, and all of a sudden you had one news agency that owned half the newspapers in the United States. And then you started seeing the major corporations consolidate each one of the local news organizations, where all of a sudden every Fox News station, every one of the local channels was repeating the exact same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a great clip where everybody warns you of the danger of online news. And this is done by about 30 different.
Oh yeah. Well, it's all the same script that they send out to Fox 49 and ABC 22.
Script, yes.
Yeah. Like, everyone's getting the same thing. There was one that got played not that long ago where, like, the way they're doing, like, okay, as a tech guy, they're sending you out feed, right, from the major conglomerate, right? So you're getting, like, CBS's, main stuff. You know how they were doing it? They had a camera pointed at a television in the studio. And, like, that's how they were, like, okay, like, you're getting, and it's just like the camera moved and everyone was like, oh, like, and, like, someone clipped it and put it up on Reddit, and it was just like, yep, that's exactly what they've been doing. But, stuff like this story with Disney, right, where we know media is not gonna cover any moves against Disney, the company.
No, and because Disney owns ABC, ABC is going to defend Disney.
Yeah. So,
and thing is, the networks, as far as what's liberal, what's lib left, even though we know that doesn't really exist.
Whichever that compass points you towards, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's all
ABC and NBC are going to line up together and say, this isn't, fair towards Disney.
right.
Even though it's literally a union issue in California, it's a union issue in Florida.
And it's an issue that, if you read the article, is something that they've already agreed to try to deal with, and they're just not doing it. It's like
correct. They're not stepping up.
Right. And so it's literally, we've already asked for the bare minimum. You've agreed to the bare minimum. And now you're like, I don't know. Do we have to? Like, and now you're going to see people go, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're going to now sue you for this particular thing because we know stuff. Like, essentially, they're suing them for a couple of things, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right. Well, from reading through it.
It's something in every union suit, because it's never just the wages. There's benefits, the things that normally a union employer would be responsible for. Right. Either that or the union would pick up the slack. In this case, the union workers from Disney and whichever union it is they're actually associated with.
Disney just has to purchase the senators in Florida and the senators in California, and then they're good.
And those are the only senators that actually care about the constituency, because those are the only ones that are affected. The rest of the United States, you can afford it. You go to Disneyland, once a year.
Yeah.
I've known a few people who've done that. I know a few people who've never been to Disneyland.
Well, as a person who knows the history of Disney World as well, right? We wouldn't have had it without a World's Fair. Right.
Oh no, we wouldn't have.
Which was a big commie, like it's such a socialist viewpoint. Let's have the government of a town pay a bunch of people to try to bring their best inventions and art and whatever to the same place, and we're gonna make it a big thing so we can earn money for the town. Right. We'll pay tickets and whatever, and people will come from all around the world to see what we put here because of this World's Fair. And Disney went, I could do this and monetize it, and he.
Well, the thing is the World's Fair was monetized for the longest time.
Yeah, it always was. Yeah,
monetized until it literally greed. Caused it to collapse in and on itself.
Well, that's why it was like the Olympic organization, right?
The World's Olympic Fair organization is about ready to fail completely too. They still monetized that and completely destroyed the system that created the Olympics in the first place.
Yeah, so that's what happened to the World's Fair, which is why you don't see them anymore, right? Is because they know it can get co-opted and whatever. I would love World's Fairs to happen again, because I feel like they are. Like, in their base, if you think about it, you're going to pay your best and brightest to do the best and brightest things that they can for the people in a way that can benefit them. And it leaves parks there for people to like that was the point, right? Was that essentially you would publicly fund the building of a park, and you would also immediately recruit your money back because you're using the park to hold this event that people are going to want to come see, because they need to taste Hershey's new chocolate wafer, Crunch Bar. And, but that's what our government should be doing, things like that. Please innovate, go do that stuff. And the little things that they're having that's why they're getting subsidies, right? That's why things like Disneyland are paid for by taxpayer dollars, because someone is thinking, oh, well, if we fund this, it does benefit the public, right? To some degree. The issue is that the exploitative use of their workers, and it's like literally Willy Wonka couldn't do his job without enslaving Oompa Loompas, right?
No, he couldn't.
Yeah,
and literally that's where we're at right now. We have maintained these industries, these entertainment industries, on essentially slave labor, and we talk. It's sort of one of those dark things about Willy Wonka. How many of the Oompa Loompas committed suicide on an annual basis?
Yeah.
And here we are looking at Disneyland employees, Disney World employees that are coming out, after even after a season, literally after a season of working for Disneyland. So ultimately depressed because they finally figured out that all the magic that they grew up with was a lie.
Yeah.
And here we have political systems in place to perpetuate this level of exploitation.
Yeah.
We could literally recreate Disneyland on a smaller scale in every city USA.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that we've allowed Disneyland to patent and monopolize so much of what we've done.
Yeah.
Or what they've, well, and we can't recreate an awful lot of what they've done because it's been patented. And it's like, how long have they held the patents on some of this stuff?
Forever.
30 years, 40 years,
yeah.
years, and it's because of a system of intellectual property that allows them to retain, it's like, you can't make a roller coaster like ours.
Yeah.
Even though we made this roller coaster like 50 years ago, we can't allow anybody else to reverse engineer it.
Yep. Even though it happens all the time, but you know what Disney's biggest business is? Litigation. They love suing the crap out of everyone for copyright anything. Like even us saying mouse in this stream or showing this picture, right, could get you, flagged to some degree, which is why I'm like scrolling past it quickly. But to me, these things are Disney among many problems. But I think this one in particular, where it's like it's something they've already agreed to, but it's like these particular workers, they don't get it, right? These particular workers don't get it. They have to be stuck there. They're the ones with a terrible commute into the like city where it's 1,000 degrees and you're just there all day to deal with Honey Boo Boo and her family trying to like go to Disneyland and or you're worse. I had friends who worked at Disney World who were like world-renowned musicians, like symphonic level guys, right, who are stuck working at Disney World and like they have to do it in a fucking giant costume so that Goofy can play trumpet and like what, like like to me it's just like the worst. It's like that Disney could be paying for a symphonic orchestra to be playing all the time. Do they? No.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They play some guy to play like, Camptown Races at the front of the, like the what is it? It's such like the white supremacist, like weird, like white picket fence America, Main Street USA, like exhibit that they have. Like
they yanked Song of the South.
Yes. Yeah, they pulled that down, thankfully, over like how long it take them to pull that. Have you seen Sound of the South, Shane? That was one of the first movies that I don't think Disney's directly involved with it, but they were like using it on. It was like connected with Disney to some degree, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't. Well, it was the Disney. No, it was the Disney animation done over real life, and you had Bear Fox, and Bear Rabbit, and Uncle Remus, because it wasn't Uncle Remus adaptation. This was Uncle Remus stories as told to the young master who wrote down the stories, and they adapted it. Would I get into trouble singing, the Bluebird? No,
probably.
Yeah,
but I know which one. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. I
grew up in Live Oak, Florida, which has a little river running through it called the Swanee, right? And the guy who wrote that, what's his name? Folk, I think. Way down upon the Swan. So I've been to this guy's museum and like read these. He was like, you think people are racist now,
Oh, dude, no. And that was one of those things when I was taking acting classes in college. You step back and they go into the history of the Black Actors Guild. Back before World War II and everything that led into that, and the fact that they actually made specific plays and movies about the Old South specifically to employ Black actors for a period of time. Who. I mean, and there were some truly awesome Black singers who came out with songs about what it was like, the slavery working on.
Well, Florida was a big proponent of what are those called? Like where people are in blackface, and what were those?
Oh yeah.
What were those? What was that like entertainment called though? Like
vaudeville.
Vaudeville, that's it. right? So like Florida was a big proponent.
Weird.
Part of the reason why Disney liked Florida was because of like all the vaudeville shows Florida would put on. You know, we had you know, we were a big entertainment state before then too. We had spring resorts and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of the restaurant Bojangles, but that existed in Florida for a period of time. And I would not, you know, if you're sensitive with that kind of stuff, I wouldn't go into a Bojangles that's not been renovated, you know, because it was bad. It was like, if you thought, you know, who was it recently that got canceled? This pancake syrup, you know.
Oh, Aunt Jemima.
If you thought Aunt Jemima was bad, go to one of those old Bojangles and see. But like Disneyland had the same stuff. Like you look at the crows in Dumbo or whatever, are all vaudeville.
All the crows in Dumbo, that was the equivalent of blackface, you know, because I mean, literally, it was the soul singers.
Yep, but it was like it was a vaudeville act that got on and like, you know, essentially. But
we can definitely get to our next story.
Yeah, we're wandering here, Reef.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next story, if you want to go ahead and play this clip here from Jayapal.
Yep.
So this is Jayapal on CNN.
Yep.
How many members are there of the House Democratic Progressive Caucus?
There are 96 members, and over half are absolutely committed to making sure we deliver both bills at the same time.
So 48 Democrats will vote against the House infrastructure bill if it does not come with the budget reconciliation package. Is that right?
More than half of our members will vote for both bills. And this was the deal, Jake, that came out of the Senate when progressive senators passed the bipartisan bill in the Senate. It was on the specific understanding and commitment that both bills would move together. And so now we want to make sure that both bills are moving together, and we're going to hold to that commitment. And so, yes, more than half our members will not move the bipartisan bill without the reconciliation bill being passed.
So the first thing I want to say about that is first of all, she can't even count on the entire CPC, and she just said that right there. Because the first thing you need to know is the entire CPC is not progressive. About half of them belong to another caucus, the New Wave Democrats, who are the centrist corporatists. So she's saying, we can only count on about 36 members there. Okay. Out of those 36 members, I'm going to tell you right now, about 5 or 10 of them at least, at minimum, I'm going to be generous here, are going to cave. And even if they get this through the House, this has to go through the Senate. And in the Senate, you got big bad Joe Manchin, who they're going to pin everything on if this doesn't pass.
Yeah, they've been doing this similar to how AOC had to perform, yesterday, crying that she had to change her vote to, abstain or present on that the Iron Dome funding, right? So to me, the Democrats have been using this little tactic of I'm gonna set something up you like, and just so that see, hey, we tried, right? Like AOC tried to vote no, right? Those kind of things, right? Somebody tried. There's still progressives here, right? We're gonna try to get this done. Oh no, it failed. Oh, I'm so sorry that you didn't even get the crumbs you wanted.
This is interesting because
in the Senate, 11 so-called progressive senators wrote a letter saying basically the same thing as this. Now these are the 11 senators. I was going to just finish up the 11 senators. You have to count on.
Go ahead, Shane.
One of those senators is Elizabeth Warren. She's going to cave immediately on that letter. And Bernie has not been fighting that much lately. The other one, Sheldon Whitehouse. Like, you got to look at the list of senators who we have to count on if this gets to the Senate. A bunch of them are going to cave based on who they are. But go ahead, Joe.
Well, this goes back to the bipartisan bill that they passed. It was a $2 trillion bill, of what was supposed to be part of a $3.5 trillion total package. But this was one of those things they actually found 11 Republican senators to go in and vote on. And the Republican senators basically agreed to this because it represented a significant cut in what the final price tag was on the infrastructure bill and a number of other things that Bernie was promising. Bernie came in with a promise of 3.5 trillion. This is what the progressives are looking at. They still want the 3.5 trillion in addition to the 2 trillion that they got the Senate to agree to before. So this comes back to, how did they negotiate, and were they actually negotiating with integrity in the process? Because literally they never would have gotten those 11 senators, 2 of which were from Idaho, no less. Both of the Idaho senators, Republican, deep red state, actually voted in support of that $2 trillion bill on the promise that $3 trillion package would be cut significantly. And we've already had at least one House representative come out and say, yeah, 2 trillion is now the ceiling, folks. We're 2 trillion is the ceiling. So they've already lost half the Democrats, whether you're looking at the Democrats like Elizabeth Warren, who have decided one way or the other, who are coming out. You've lost Bernie already, because his promise of the 3.5 trillion had nothing to do with what the Republican senators approved, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. These 11 progressive senators, the only way they're ever going to get anything is if they're as stubborn as Joe Manchin.
Yeah.
And they're not.
They're not that stubborn. They're not willing to put their political capital, on the line for this particular issue. Especially underneath the current administration we have. Right now you have the idea of getting Republicans to vote for a higher debt ceiling than we currently have under, Biden. They voted to raise it and raise it again and raise it a third, however many times they needed to raise it under Trump, and the COVID relief bill, and the fact that there are a significant number of companies in red states that have already failed and are failing. COVID funding to each and every one of the states continues to be a big issue, but it's literally falling all through the floor.
So it doesn't matter if it gets through the Senate, if it gets through the House. It's never going to get through the Senate.
No, it's not, because the 11 senators that they need, the 11 that they managed to get the 2 trillion from, 6 months ago, will never agree to it. They will never get, and if even just one of the Democrats caves, they won't even get the simple majority.
Exactly. So these 11 progressives, I'm going to tell you now, it's not even going to be Warren who's going to keep it. Sheldon Whitehouse will cave first. I'm telling you now.
Well, it's like
Sheldon, yeah.
It's like yesterday with AOC. Why did they make her? Like, it was such a bend the knee moment. Like, they do these like weird power games with squad members and anyone that's like slightly it's like they didn't need AOC to vote present on that. They already had the vote on that. Like, these things, it's like they already have the votes. Let the people who might want to have a moral stand on it, just let them. You're going to beat them anyway. Why does it matter? It should help you, right? Hey, they tried, but we beat them.
It's about reconciliation, like you said. It's power play. You will bend the knee, or you will not be back.
Nancy Pelosi is going to squash at least 10 of those CPC members almost immediately. At least 10 of them.
They already probably were ready to do that without even they don't need to get their mind right. They're already there. Most of them are already there. They don't got to get. They don't need boss man to come in to tell them nothing. Their boss man hired them for a reason. And
here's the other thing: the CPC is a joke.
Yeah.
CPC is a joke. You need to have
any of those.
The original idea of the Justice Democrats was have their own caucus.
Yeah,
they didn't do that.
I want to ask you, Joe, on the other side of this aisle from this.
Okay.
Like we I can't even self-identify as anything usually, because these dumb shit libs like take over whatever word we decide to use. They're the most progressive. They're I can't use progressive anymore. If I use any of the socialist or communist words, there's particular parts of the American public that will throw me out of that bar. right? So I can't
Correct.
necessarily do that. I can bring policies to the table they might like. There's plenty of that I could do, but it's like that. It's like I can't even.
What's the question, Reef?
Well, I'm just wondering. I'm wondering what like the libertarian, like, does that, do you guys feel like that word gets co-opted a lot? Like, you know,
Oh yeah, it absolutely gets
like
co-opted a lot.
corporate conservative.
Right, we have hard right that comes along and says, you know what, we believe in liberty, and it's like, honestly, most of them, when they start talking, you know, liberty for this and liberty for that, it's, you know, it's liberty for me but not for thee. If you're not you're not doing liberty my way, you don't get to do liberty either.
Right.
We see an awful lot of that across the spectrum. But you start looking at situations like this, you know, we do have certain elements within the liberty circle that consider themselves anarchist communists, you know, in the old school sense. And you know, they're looking at what's going on, and it's like all we see out of Washington D.C. is authoritarianism. All we see is more centralization of power. You know, this bill, you know, as important as it may be to some people in the terms of whether it's 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 5 trillion, 6 trillion, you know, at this point it's just another number. You know,
well, those are,
what is it?
Those are all crumbs to begin with.
26 trillion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what's another 3 trillion at this point? Literally, we have injected so much money printer go, you know, it's all fake money. What's keeping our economy alive? Pure imagination.
Yeah.
You know, it's consumerism. It's the need to buy things. Our retail,
which
therapy,
is why they're so worried about,
you know, go buy yourself something.
It's why they're so worried about cryptocurrency and all that stuff. Like, there's the establishment is losing this game. They just don't realize how quickly they are. They're driving the whole thing off the cliff, and you know, we're just going to be stuck there going, "We told you so." You know.
So I just want to
make things we're looking at is we look at the cycle of empire, you know, and how things go.
Yep.
You know, by all accounts, we are at the end stage of empire. You know, we are where Rome was. You know,
you're saying the Visigoths can't quite. We can't quite get past the Visigoths. We made it. We made it to what's that river? You know, we've made it there. They've held the pass. We can't take, you know, like, oh well, England's going to be a thing now. Rome can't have England because they're not going to make it past the, you know, the Goths. So
they're not going to make it past the northern wall.
Yeah, they're not making it. Like they've made their empire so vast that they can't keep control of the entire thing. And yeah, I mean, it's classic empire falling.
And the thing is empire has learned from each successful iteration.
Yep.
You know, you had Rome, it managed to make it so far. From Rome, England finally managed to become the predominant power, and the British Empire, you know, for the longest time, sun never set on the British Empire. Then along came America, and you know, the British Empire. Yeah, it was.
Sun never sets on the U.S. Empire, but the sun sets on the British Empire at this point.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it's not.
Doesn't sit on them, you know.
Yeah, even then, it's not necessarily like they still have a big control over lots of territory, and you know, like so they control a lot of, you know, at the bottom line, all this government stuff is just how to control resources. That's
it really is
at its base level, right? You know, you're trying to control the resources of the populace that you're governing, right, as well as keep other, you know, people that you don't govern to get you don't want, you know, Canadians to come in and take your uranium. You know, you want to keep all that.
England has Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's the new phrase that's been developing about the global economy. Yeah. It's state capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, in that there's no longer private capitalism. There's no longer free market capitalism. This is state capitalism. You know, the government decides the winners and losers, and we move militaries around the world in order to ensure that specific multinational corporations are able to continue to monopolize certain aspects of what's going on. Now, one of the things that we're running into problems with right now on a global scale with regards to the state capitalism is, for the longest time, America's, the US dollar, the fiat currency, the US dollar since 1970 has been a made-up currency. It's only been governed by the strength of the United States military. And right now we're in full-scale okay, we haven't reached hyperinflation yet.
Yeah.
But another $6 trillion spending bill out of Congress this year, could easily change that, because Congress is no longer taxing enough in order to stabilize the amount of currency that's existing within the system.
Yeah.
So
I'll stick up for the MMT people that I'm sure show up, but that it's not necessarily the tactic of the money printing that's the problem. It's the way it's being used, right? It's being shoved into the big business and the military. That's where all that printer money goes to, right? And it's not going to actually things that we can use to make money, as a country. Like,
it doesn't. And this is an age-old. This goes clear back to FDR.
Yeah.
FDR. He had his initial stint with trickle-down economics, thing, and then if you injected money into big business, it would eventually trickle down. Even the spokesman's back in the day, who's classic. I'm trying to remember who was the counter guy for FDR's. Tennessee.
I remember.
No,
but
Williams.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so he was talking about, if you just given it to the poor man, at least the money would have touched the poor man's hand before it ended up in the rich man's hand.
Yeah.
Because you give money to the poor man, it's going to be in the rich man's hand before midnight.
Well,
here's the thing. If you give it to the rich, they're going to hoard the money. But if you give it to the guy who needs to buy some bread and needs to buy some food, it's going to go right into the economy immediately. And that's
generally, if you shove it to the bottom, it'll make its way back up.
It'll go back up to the up to the top. Like I said,
almost
back to
immediately.
The top
yeah. So then you got to pull it again, put it back to the bottom until that evens out again to where that wealth that wealth gap is actually dealt with, right? You're going to be in a position where all that right now, that trickle down situation where we're what is it? I can't remember what it's called, but it's quantitative easing. That's it. Where we're just giving money. We're just giving money to banks. Here you go, banks. You want money? Here you go. And no one's saying anything. Literally the thing we did in the recession that everyone was so upset about, that we bailed out the banks. We're doing it every month now as a bill.
Well, yeah, literally we are. We're handing the banks, it's like, we're sorry about all the foreclosures. Here's the money and go ahead and continue with foreclosure.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, we're going to put people out of work, and then we're not going to give the people money to pay their bills so that the banks can continue to repossess. Literally, in addition to everything else that's going on as far as just injecting money into the top, now all that money in the top is being used to purchase things that normally, would be purchased by the people on the bottom. You are seeing the wealthy hoard. And this is especially apropos with regards to the Disney issue and the homelessness issue. We BlackRock, I believe, is the main company that's been in real estate acquisition. Literally, they've been given free money by the U.S. Treasury, giving control over the money printer, and they have been given free money on top of their zero interest loans. And they've gone out and literally driven up the prices on housing all across the United States to the point where there are no longer home ownership is nearly impossible in a lot of markets.
This just to be clear, this is the same. This is the same BlackRock that also goes into the Middle East and brings mercenaries with them to hold resource-rich areas. Isn't that the same BlackRock?
There's an argument.
Connected with Blackwater organizations as well,
let's get over to our next story from
we're almost done. We got two little short ones, and so let's pull
the
up
Biden from NPR. Is that on the screen now?
Yep.
The Biden administration is fighting in court to keep a Trump-era immigration policy. Now, everyone pay attention to the date. This is from September 20th, 2021. Now, I want to show you a tweet under here from Joe Biden. Donald Trump's remain in Mexico policy is dangerous, inhumane, and goes against everything we stand for as a nation of immigrants. My administration will end it. That's from March 12th, 2020. Does anybody see a problem here?
Turns out hypocrisy exists. You know, but this is more standard. Like this kind of stuff doesn't surprise me at all, right? This is the classic, oh yeah, Joe Biden's lesser of two evils. Yeah, not by much, man. Like,
not by much. I mean, he was second in command to the deporter in chief.
Yes, who deported more people than Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I don't know why
people don't like that it exists. Like, that's why I never understood why Republicans hated Obama. I'm like, he does have all the stuff that you guys should like, right? The stuff you guys are saying you like. He deported a bunch. He started a bunch of wars. Like, he's doing it
like a progressive. And you
can't have that. Yeah, you can't do that. You couldn't possibly.
And
talk
he has
about,
the D next to it.
Yeah, like he gave a gift to the insurance companies, like any of those things that.
Oh
like
yeah,
I never,
the Obama.
Yeah. The Obama, like any of those things to me is just like, but this is classic.
I mean, he single-handedly, you may not think about this, but in the process of creating Obamacare and reinvigorating the health insurance company, health insurance industry, he literally created the current situation with regards to the COVID crisis that's happening in several states across the United States.
Yeah.
We did the high profit engineering and reverse engineered healthcare to maximize profits. We reduced the number of ICU beds during that downtime because we didn't need them. And if we didn't need them, we didn't need to pay the staff to,
and you better not accept a vaccine from Cuba or Russia or anywhere else other than the ones we've solely selected for. Right. It's classic. To me, this is, Jimmy Dore talks about this a lot, and I wish people would start listening to this. Right. But it's he said during when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump that Trump in some ways is better because you have stuff like this where at least Trump puts an ugly face to that ugly policy and they'll get called out. Right. Democrats will go and oh look at see he's being shit, he's keeping kids in cages and whatever and
hey, Reef, right? Those are overflow facilities.
Those are I'm sorry cage, sorry, I'm so sorry, overflow. Yeah. Did they put the hamster like bottles in there yet? Is that have they got that so like people can like make sure that they're getting hydrated? Yeah. Get like a wheel in there. I like, dude, they're you could keep hamsters better than they're keeping people in these facilities, like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But having said that, I know who built them, and I know it wasn't Trump, right? Like I know it was somebody else that people just ignored, and no one listened to when the radical lefties were saying, "Hey, he's starting a bunch of wars and deporting a bunch of people, and he's making these facilities." And this is not good. Oh no! He's fuzzy. He's the Republicans bad. Like they're not in office. Like it's like it just goes on to
the irony.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the irony of the overflow. The privatized company that became responsible for all of the overflow in the holding facilities.
Yeah.
That was a Clinton crony.
Yeah.
That procedure was put in place under Bill Clinton.
Yep.
And the privatization went to a Clinton crony.
Right.
Who is still running it.
So what's the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans?
None. Other than like they put a different letter next to their name for the most part. Like there's some identity stuff. Like there's particular issues Democrats will stick up for that Republicans won't because of their particular political identity they have.
With the Republicans.
But generally, even on those that you'll have just enough Democratic senators to not vote on it to like there's a bunch of that. But this to me is like, okay, this is what he says on the campaign trail, right? Or what he says to the public, but the private position, it comes out, a couple months later, right? and no one's really going to say anything about this. Like even NPR's article, who should be generally against this.
Is my camera disappeared?
Yes, it did, but it might come there. It's back. You're back. But
here's one of the things that's interesting. If we actually take a look at the policy and the way it's been affected over the years, literally, the Clinton crony who is running the entire structure, who is running the entire organization, he literally expected to be fired once Trump was elected. He was in the process of dissolving his company when Trump said, "No, you're still working for me."
Yeah.
Which was why they were short-staffed on everything. That's why, they were scrambling. Yeah. They had closed down some of their facilities because they expected to be downsizing after the Obama administration, after Hillary Clinton had secured, as Secretary of State, the contract for them, through the Obama administration. As soon as Trump was elected, he started dissolving that company, expecting to be fired, expecting the immigration policy to change.
It's the illusion of choice that the American dream has decided to become. What do you prefer? Do you prefer Cheerios or like Wheatios? Which one do you?
Honey Nut O's.
Honey Nut O's. You like Honey Nut O's? Like this is the same. It's do you want Democrat O's or Republican O's? They're still the same. You're still. It's like, we got a whole shelf full of all these choices. You could get Joe. You could get Joe Manchin. You could get Nancy Pelosi. You could get. It's like, they're all the same. Yeah. They're all the same thing, man. Like that's why people go online to buy their food now anyway. Like that's which Jeff Bezos just gets make a bunch of bank on because.
So we step back and we take a look at this current situation, because the big thing that made the news here recently, the big tweet, was the Haitian immigrants. Now, the Haitian immigrants, they're particularly dark-skinned, but they've gone over to Mexico and they've decided to come across the land route because getting into Mexico via raft is a lot easier. Than, trying to make Florida.
Yeah, and there was this thing called an earthquake that hit Haiti and destroyed it once, and then multiple hurricanes that destroyed it a few times on top of that. There's probably plenty of refugees that need somewhere to go. And there's plenty of room, in backwater Tennessee that they can go to. And,
there's plenty of places where, they could go and continue to live the exact same lifestyle they left in Haiti.
Yeah.
There's enough space in the U.S. where they can just set up their own communities.
It's like we already have a farmer shortage. These are people who actually know how to farm and can come over. There's land available. They'll be growing, whatever you need them to grow for with the amount of work that can actually work the land to do it. And we're going but it's like they're illegal immigrants. They haven't even immigrated here yet. They're not even here yet.
No, they're not even here yet.
It's like you're pre-criming these immigrants that we just don't want them to even touch the soil. It's
pre-crime. Yeah. We say it's illegal to cross the border, so once they cross the border, they're already criminals before we even recognize their existence. Yeah. We've already deemed them. We've already created that other. We've dehumanized, them simply by their desire to come across the border. Yeah. And then you end up with this whole scene with the Haitian immigrants come across the Mexican border, and the border patrol down there, chasing down, the Haitians on horseback. Yeah. Creating
literally like the worst optic you could have. Like you should have just gave them whips. You should have just gave them whips, and look. Me and you, Joe, we've done rural stuff, farm stuff before. Can you lasso something? Yeah. Can you use a lasso before?
No. I got very little reason to use a lasso. Now,
sure. I grew up with cattle around. You learned how to lasso things, right? I get it.
I mean, if you do it,
I get why you're using it.
Yeah.
But hey, how about ride up to the guy on your horse and say, "Hey, you want some water?" He's probably gonna go, "Yeah, I could do some water." Well, here, step into my office, like, and we'll get you
And
some water.
There were a lot of ways they could have done that differently, but part of
Sure.
the problem is the way we manage our immigration policy.
Yeah, it's
literally the waiting
terrible.
line at the legitimate entry points is so severe that people think crossing the border on foot, 100 miles away from the nearest town is going to get them into the U.S. faster, which is the absolute wrong thing to do. That's created the human trafficking problem across the southern border, the sweatshops, the sex trafficking, all of that's being run by the cartels. They're literally bringing people across. In the stories that are coming out of the from the young women who do make it across to the U.S. and are debriefed after they've been picked up by immigration just to be sent back to where they came from.
That's with adult women, let alone the children who are running away from terrible things. And it's again why the Border Patrol isn't immigrant ambassadors that take them to a place where they can get citizenship easily. And if we are accepting these political asylums as what they are, right?
Essentially, yes. Whether it's political, ecological, environmental, right? Or economic, even they're seeking asylum of some kind. That's why
the conservative Republicans will say, "Oh, the drug, they're bringing drugs." Okay.
Keep in mind,
end the drug war and allow for legalization of that. Then we create. Then that gets rid of all that.
Keep in mind, General Sean Connery, Admiral Sean Connery, let a stealth submarine get close enough to the United States with possible nuclear armaments because the guy said he was seeking political asylum. If you're coming across the border, I'm gonna just say that. I'm gonna just say that because you're like, that works, right? That's how like diplomatic immunity, something like that. Like I should be fine.
That's only if you got a Russian sub with nuclear armaments on it.
I mean, the only one. Sure, yeah, they probably were trying to get access to. Yeah, way to ruin that movie for me. Just to like make sure that I didn't remember that the United States imperialist motives might have other reasons to bring the nuclear sub over to like that stealth and
we have one more story.
I think we have one more little story, which is
we got one more story. Okay, and this goes into the stimulus bill.
Stimulus and the infrastructure bill. Yep.
Part of the 2.3 trillion or 3.5 trillion. The American stimulus. What do you think, Shane?
This is specifically on checks. So this poll is specifically on stimulus checks. This was it doesn't say that here, but where I got it, they were talking specifically about stimulus checks. So
yes, 77% said yes. Right.
We need a little more money.
But hey, $200. Hey, we gave you $200 when Trump was in office. So now, we're only going to give you $1,400. Are you good? You good now? Hey, no, that virus that's still going around that you probably shouldn't be working, and you probably should be staying home and taking care of your kids and family, and I don't know. Let's fund some stuff to make sure that that's better. Maybe give you some rental assistance so that you actually have a roof over your head, and
No, we can't do that. We have to
talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Go ahead.
In that random country.
So one of the things now. We've had a big spike all across the U.S. The spike happened to happen, about 4 weeks after the bulk of the U.S. went back to school.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the interesting thing is most of the school districts across the United States decided that they weren't going to try what they did last year.
Yeah.
They were insisting on in-person classes. They wanted butts in seats. So the teachers could take attendance.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, the interesting thing about the way the United States funds education across the United States is they like to award schools based on the average daily attendance of the student, which means they need to count butts in seats.
Yep.
So a lot of states had a lot of surplus money because those schools couldn't account for those butts in seats last year.
Right. It has to do with how much grants they're getting from particular places and all that stuff. It's all dependent on, and it's also
literally we
the whole
created
back
a
to work.
If a school administration, if a school district, if a school board wanted to get the standard funding that they were used to, they had to have kids in school attending in class where a teacher could take attendance. Okay, so all of a sudden, the one thing that spreads disease, okay, there's people out there saying, leave our kids alone, kids aren't the ones that are spreading disease. But it's like, come on, man.
But it's also they can't get that information from home.
Yeah, well, they
can't. Yeah, we can't let Mr. Rogers teach them algebra, right? They listen to Mr. Rogers, like that's Cuba. Cuba decided. I think it was Cuba. Cuba decided to make a national educational television network that essentially is played in all of their schools across the island. Right. But it's like you could, as long as you had access to cable TV, you could turn it on and your kid would be getting the same lesson that they would be getting, somewhere else, at the actual, it's like literally they film the teachers doing their lessons and send them out. Right. But
there is a teachers union that wouldn't get paid if we did that.
Oh, for sure. But it's the teachers union also has to do shit like make sure kids have the books and the teachers aren't paying out of pocket. And we're asking teachers to do so much on top of that and get nothing for it. And then now we're asking them to go risk their lives as well as the lives of the children they care about, right? To go to a building when they could easily not do that. We could easily spin the infrastructure now to make sure, that online classes are available.
I know we're talking about the stimulus here.
Yes.
But this is one of those things. It's all part of the big package and what's going on. Now, the stimulus would be nice because you're actually injecting the money down at the lowest level. The people, but what's $1,500? What's $3,000 to somebody who's not going to be able to go to work for the next 2 months, 3 months?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, then you got it to go.
It's a stipend. This is them trying to go, hey, get the fuck back to work. That's what they're trying to do. They've been
trying that for about 3 months, but the thing is, damage is done,
and people aren't wanting to go back. There's people that are not
wanting to get the vaccine,
right?
And now you got to have the vaccine in order to go back to work.
Yep, and there's people already on strike for that. And
there's people on strike for that. The healthcare situation is completely screwed up right now. You're looking at all of this, and the stipend doesn't mean jack. No. At the end, it may get people through a month. In a lot of cases, it only gets them through 2 weeks. But this is a continuing problem. They're trying to create, you can't get people back to work if the kids are still at home.
Yes.
Let's look at Canada. Yep. Canada did something not Canada. I think it was Canada. They did something interesting.
Yeah, the rest of the world gave an average of $4,000 a month to every individual per month.
And they also,
from the beginning of COVID. We're the only country that just decided to not do that. One of.
And I know people in Canada, now they're ready to go back to, a lot of them are ready to go back to work because they closed down. Initially, they did payments monthly, and now everybody's like, okay, now we're in a much better place at this point where we can go back to work. Every single elected official in our country, for the most part, I don't want to say every, but for the most part, mishandled COVID. It's not just one of them. It's pretty much all of them.
Oh, yeah, and they're continuing to mishandle it.
Yeah.
We take a look at the situation. We have employers who want people back in their offices.
Yep.
We did close to 6 months, an entire year doing remote work for an awful lot of these organizations and agencies.
Which
they've actually seen people
continue to do that. Yep.
They've seen people more productive working from home than when they go into the office.
But that's
it's better on the environment. You're not spending 2 hours commuting in San Francisco or LA.
Yep.
But the problem is they're not in the office. Somebody's not being paid to babysit them regardless of how much more productivity they're creating.
Yep.
But in order to send them back to the office, they have to get the kids out of the home, which means they got to put them back in school, put them back in seats. So this is one of those situations where you got the double whammy. You know, the schools aren't going to get paid unless there's butts in seats. So the teachers union are saying, send the kids to school. The school boards are saying, send the kids to school. Right. You know, the employers are saying, send the kids to school, because as long as that kid's at home, my people aren't coming into work.
And then you have issues in Connecticut recently. They actually just went completely back to remote learning because the kids refused to follow the rules in most of the schools.
Yeah, and that's parents literally saying, you know, I want my kid back in school, but I don't want him wearing a mask. You know, it's like, dude, you should have just pulled the kid out of school and started homeschooling him, you know, a year ago.
Well, and it's
just accepted that was the way you were going to do business.
To me, it's one of these things. For what is stopping us? Why is it just COVID? You know, like if you were giving,
why is it?
Yeah, if you were giving $4,000 a month to every American citizen in the country, how does that not help? You know?
Well, because in most places right now, $4,000 a month barely covers rent.
Sure. Yeah.
If you take a look at a family of 4, you take a look at a single mother and 2 kids.
Right.
Okay, you take a look at a single mother and 2 kids. She's going to get $4,000.
Yep.
A month.
Yep.
Okay. Rent in most of the United States is currently for a 3-bedroom apartment, rent for her
800,
boyfriend, and a
800 average, something like that. Well, for that, oh yeah, that's way more than that. 900,000.
Food.
And if you look at New York, where I am, it's going to be 33,000, 3,400.
What's the rental agreement on a refrigerator box? Because that's what you're looking at in New York, right? Like, you know, you're hoping you can get that. Like,
you got an office space and set up in the bathroom, and there's a refrigerator right next to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shove the kids. You got to have to shove. You have 3 kids. You're going to get a 2-bedroom. You're going to shove the 3 kids in one of the bedrooms and give one of them the living room.
Absolutely, Noli. You know, $4,000 a month is better than no dollars a month. If you're not making any money at all because you're stuck at home, $4,000 is going to help. But at the end of the day, you know, how far does that $4,000 take you? Does it pay the rent? You know, does it pay the loan on the car so that you can live out of the back of your van down by the river?
Yeah, I mean, you're eventually going to need to have a more consistent income. I mean, that's the thing, is that what COVID has done is it forced people to start asking the question: is the work system we're in, is it worth continuing the way it is now? Because it obviously has problems and limitations, and you know, it has things in the way of itself that don't help the average person be able to do what they need. Right now, even if you went back to work, you're probably only getting $4,000 a month from work. You'd rather stay home and get $4,000 a month if you could, and do nothing than work like if you're getting what's minimum wage per hour plus average hour. Right, you're talking about, you know, like the minimum wage doesn't cover rent in any state. It doesn't.
No.
You're not going to be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment on that. You're just not, right, anywhere.
Well, and this goes back to the rent issue. You know, we were talking about that earlier with BlackRock and the fact that they're monetizing
buying up
housing.
Everything. Yep.
They're buying up everything. You know, right now used to be the price of a house was based on, you know, a family's income to own the house.
Yeah.
You know, these days, the price of a property is how much can we extort people? How much money can a landlord or a property management organization milk out of a property over, you know, the given 30 years of the value of the house?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what's my annual profit margin? How much can I get out of this property every year by making sure that there is no housing anywhere else for them to own or work in? You know, so we're dealing with this fact that we're not paying people to own property anymore.
Yep.
We're paying people to rent.
Yep. I mean, it's hungry hippos. That's what our economy is right now. Is just gobble up everything you can if you can get it. You know,
there's a graphic that shows that in the 1950s or the 1940s, on one income, a family could own a house
and a car.
And then
a brand new car every
people
other year.
Are working, you're upper middle class.
Yeah. I mean, and the people at the bottom are struggling to just barely make ends meet. That, you know, if you get sick, good luck. You know, you're not going to help there. And so what's left for you to do? You can't get an education. You can't get a job that's going to pay you enough to get out. Well, you know, if there's the recruiting office, they'll take you. You know, they always love bodies.
Our poverty draft.
Right.
Our
Exactly.
Draft.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, but
Noli's got a comment. You know, Noli, where are you from here? You know, Noli's saying my rent was raised 2 times during the pandemic. I've been in the same place for 6 years. You fix everything, even raise the property value by some of the work you've done. You know, the landlord hasn't done squat, but he's raised your rent twice during the pandemic.
Yeah, because he needs it too. That's the other thing people don't realize is that landlord's hurting too, because he's not making any money. If no one can pay rent, he's not making stuff, and he's got rent to pay. You know,
and that's it. The few people who are paying rent, he has to raise the rent on, because they've frozen, you know, the eviction process.
Yep.
You know, you can't evict people. So literally, why pay rent when you can't get rid of me? Right.
Well, and it's also you can't, even if you could pay the rent, you're not able to, because you know, your job, you can't go to your work, or you don't have work. You never had work to begin with, and this hasn't helped, right? No one's hiring new people anyway, even though there's a massive worker shortage in a lot of places, right? They're just not. They're not being hired.
Down the streets, down to half-day schedules right now. You know, I showed up at lunch. I showed up for lunch, and they say we're not opening until dinner.
Yeah. What?
Okay.
That's weird. Like
Dairy Queen that's not open for lunch. What?
Yeah, how does that work? Like that kind of stuff, and it's because there's no incentive to work there. Why work there when you could do that same work somewhere else and get paid more for it? You know. But anyway, it is 7:33. We've been at this for a good hour and a half. If people want to continue these conversations with both of you, I suggest they go to the Discord in the description of the YouTube video. I suggest people going to our Patreon, giving us a little love there. You know, we got rent to pay too. You know, and just follow us on all the socials. See when we go live. I usually try to post 15 minutes before we do, and put the link out there. So go to @Krtd Media on all those socials. Joe, your socials right underneath you at ID Joe for Congress. Right.
Perfect.
You know. So, but otherwise, I think that's it for us today. Like, subscribe.
So everybody,
hit that bell.
Tune in next week and see Jerry Vastilatis for the first time on KRTD News.
Yep. All right, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in, Noli.
Bye-bye. Love everyone.